Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Brian. I'm the host of the Left of Greg show. You're going to be watching the video version of our audio podcast. Please, guys, if you like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel. There's going to be more content on there if you're already a subscriber, and a better way for us to get you guys some more stuff. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them below. Check out our links down below to get a hold of us and to actually find out more places where you can get more information about this. Please like and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook at HBPRNA. Remember, all these cases that we discuss and all these discussions that we have are through the lenses of what we call human behavior, pattern recognition, and analysis. So please like it, share it, tell your friends about it, and we hope you enjoy the show. Thanks.
That was what the website would look like on that one.
So we'll just go ahead and get started here, Greg.
Good morning.
So good morning to you. Looks like pretty soon here, states are going to start slowly opening back up a little bit, and so we can kind of see what happens from that. But before
Jonathan said, "World be damned. We are staying shut. You're not welcome here."
As you should. We'll go to sorry, it was Cincinnati area. I don't know if it was actually in Cincinnati, but might be a small town outside of there.
Yeah.
To discuss a little issue that happened, which we found rather amusing, but speaks to criminal mindset, and then our response to that, and cognitive performance. This is basically about performance and how we interpret events based on what we think is true. Yes?
Let me balance that, because I can only speak to a certain amount of things in my life. I'm only an expert in a very, very narrow bandwidth of life. But I've been in thousands of police pursuits, okay, on both sides, but mostly on the police side. But what I want to say is never have I had this situation, and that's why I thought it was so novel, and we needed to touch on it, Brian.
Okay, so we've got these teenage kids, right? And I'll just kind of read it from the article so I get what's been reported accurate. So it started in the Hilltop Shopping Plaza on Hamilton Avenue. This is in the Cincinnati area. Officers, it was 2 a.m. Officers are checking on a business there, and then from the report, it says a vehicle entered the parking area and the driver sounded the horn on several occasions to gain the officer's attention. As the officers approached, the occupants of the vehicle were seen exiting the vehicle and ran around the vehicle. I believe that's referred to as a Chinese fire drill.
No, not anymore. It isn't. No,
I don't know why
exactly
people call it that or where that came from. So
I think that's a disparaging
just
remark.
Delete that. I'll probly edit that out.
No. We just nowadays, Brian, we correct ourselves on the air, and we say it is in fact a fire drill.
So they ran around the vehicle, got in, and sped off. So then. Okay, so police give chase, start to pursue the vehicle. They ran the license plate. The number came back stolen. Then these kids came up to an intersection and struck another vehicle and crashed into a utility pole. They tried to run, but agencies were already on hand. They captured the kids who ran off. And so what it came to is these kids were out kind of joyriding and in a stolen vehicle. And the reason why they went over to the officers and honked and got their attention and then sped off is because they thought that the officers would not be able to give chase due to the COVID-19 precautions and 6 feet of social or physical distancing. So hilarious.
Hilarity ensued.
Yeah.
At that point. So first of all, roll tape back just a little bit, because all the coppers that are on the call right now, and folks, do your homework. Listen, joyriding is a bad word in the cop scenario.
Yes.
Receiving and stealing stolen property, driving a stolen vehicle, stealing a vehicle, those are all felonies. So joyriding is a lesser included offense that prosecutors can plead down to. So it's the boys will be boys defense, Your Honor. It's their first offense. You don't want to slam them, right?
Yeah.
But by the same token, think they had enough mens rea. They had enough forethought to steal a ride and go driving around in a stolen car.
And not only that,
okay, but now they go, hey, look, there's the cops. So now they're taunting the cops, going, they can't touch us. I can imagine the guys in the car, not unlike that. What is that? Super Troopers?
Yeah.
But we weren't going the speed limit. You get what I'm trying to say?
I think of the same guy.
Speeding in.
Yeah, or the guy who's going like, if you're a cop, you have to tell me. It's
exactly.
It's the same thing.
But I tell you the reason, and everybody's going at home is going jocularity. this isn't funny. Listen, it is. It's tragically funny. It's ironically funny,
Yes.
but there's a point. And the
Yeah.
point is, if you were out driving with your family or coming home from work, or you had a lunch break from the emergency room where you work and you're going back at 2:30 in the morning to start your shift, you could have been the one hitting this intersection. If you were already fragile, or you were unseat belted, all bad, things. What could have happened, Brian, if that
Right.
pole was another pedestrian, for
Well,
example? Do you get what I'm trying to say? This could have turned fatal, and we never think that. We always think that we're going to see the danger, right? And then we're going to be able to react to it. Not
yeah.
that the danger is going to come, quote, out of nowhere
Yeah.
and blindside it.
So let's get into it, because we're going to talk about a few other cases and things that have been happening recently.
Okay.
But we're going to talk about it. I say stick to what you said, the performance. So I want to take it from
Yeah.
a few different perspectives, and the mindset of the criminal in that, the police officer, and then so what to me? I'm neither one of the. Well, I'm a reformed criminal, right? I don't know, how does that work when you're out on bail. So,
Brian,
but meaning,
I've
and then
worked
from the
with
other
you.
person.
You haven't been reformed. Do you
So
get what I'm saying?
the third perspective would be just average person, because like you just said, like we all laugh, ha ha ha, but what could have happened, and that's the
Yes.
point, is that yeah, that could have been a woman pushing her kid across the street in a stroller, and then now they're both
Not
dead.
at 2 a.m, but yeah, they get the point. So here's the thing.
Whoa! I don't want to get into your personal.
Exactly. My thing was,
Just-
ma'am, show me where he touched you.
Yeah.
The idea here, though, Brian, is if we just drill down in and focus on one thing. Why were they at the mall? They were at the mall not because the cops were at the mall. They were at the mall looking for other kids to show off. Look, we stole a car.
Well, and
get
where
what
are
I'm
you
trying
going?
to say?
Where are you going to go? I mean, even though
Where are you
it's
going to
2
go?
in the morning,
Where
you're only
zombies go? Zombies are going to go to the mall.
Yeah,
That's the
and
only few
doesn't
places.
Doesn't matter that it's 2 in the morning. That's
Right. So they went to the
that's
drive-through
yeah.
at Taco Bell, which is open 24 hours.
Yep.
They circled around there, but they saw some heavies that would shoot at them. You get what I'm saying? And they didn't want that kind of play. So then they drove to the mall and said, we'll just show some other kids. And folks are going, well, how can you prove that? Let's see, 35 years of experience doing it
Yeah.
and seeing it all the time. But the idea is that your objective lens has to be open. Open your aperture and think, what were you doing at that age group? So these kids didn't mean harm, but they didn't understand the cost-benefit analysis of hitting the gas pedal when the red and blues came on, Brian. And that's treacherous and dangerous. If I had a kid that age, all my kids are in their 50s. You get what I'm trying to say? And they're in nice, neat cages in the basement.
Those aren't
locked with sawdust.
Those
like
aren't your
hamsters.
children. Those are your neighbors.
Well, they're somebody's children, nonetheless. But the idea is, that's not funny. The idea, but it is kind of. The idea here, though, Brian, is I would sit down with my kids and I would say, listen, there are people that don't make the types of decisions that you do. They don't engage their analytical brain. They don't think of advanced critical thinking. And those kids are going to show you a gun. And they're going to say, this is, I found this gun and it's my dad's. And look, it's loaded. That's when you say no, go and tell. Somebody's going to say, hey, look, I cracked the column on his sled and it's free. Look, and nobody's going to find us. We'll just dump it behind the thing. And you're sitting there thinking, doing the should I stay or should I go? The catecholamine group is jumping and you're going, because it's exciting and pinpoint pupils, and you got to tell the kid, no. Okay. And somebody says, yeah, but they're going to sample drugs and, illicit fornication and all that other. Well, I guess they're gonna, if you don't guide them and be there with them for some of that decision making. Or am I way off?
Yeah, and this goes into using the analytical framework, most likely, most dangerous course of action, right? Because that brings in another thing. I mean, there's kids have done, like, who hasn't done stupid stuff when you were a kid?
We all have.
Everyone has. I don't think I made a decent choice in my life till I hit 30, and that was like once, and I'm hoping to do it again sometime.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
We're all looking forward to that day, Brian.
So I married McKaylee. Done. I made one good decision.
So wait till she hears the fire drill comment. Yeah.
So
you know what I'm saying?
So here's the thing, though.
That changes everything, Brian.
It goes into how we look at it. Is you can't always just assume. Yeah.
But if it's going to kill you, it's going to kill you.
It's not just about but it doesn't have to be, okay? Because there are so many unintended consequences, right?
Oh,
and this is why we never do. So it's not just that of, hey, this could have killed someone. These kids are going to get in trouble. What they did was technically commit several felonies.
Yes,
they're probably not going to get charged.
And they complicated those felonies as well, right?
So
exactly.
So that's but hey, this is one of those, thankfully no one got hurt, right? But this can happen anything, because it just reminded me too of, I know we weren't gonna
But
I would
costs go up, the vehicle cost, the
yeah,
damage to the
yeah, and
owner. I get it.
I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about even when you're making that decision to do something. We just heard the story about the kids who were killed when they went up to do ding dong ditching someone, and they take
Look for
off,
your
and the
lessons
guy
learned coming up.
is so angry. What he this guy the homeowner is so angry, he chases after them, and they end up
Right.
getting.
So here, Brian, we have a situation where there are kids between 14 and 18 inside of a car, packed into the car. They were doing an overnight, a simple overnight, Brian. They're doing an overnight, and they're all sitting around, and they're doing like a truth or dare kind of thing like that. And the one kid says, "Well, I dare you to, prank call somebody." And the other kid said something tantamount to, "Well, hey, how about we ring that doorbell and run?" I've never heard the ding dong ditch, but I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they all get in a car and they drive to a location because they know this house that they want to do it at. What they don't know is how that spiral is going to turn out, Brian.
Right.
The guy could have shot him at the door. The guy could have kidnapped him and kept them in his basement. The guy could have jumped into his car in rage and raced them down and, not thinking clearly, rammed them. And now that guy's in for involuntary manslaughter or voluntary
Oh
manslaughter.
yeah,
A
that's
bunch of the kids are dead. The one kid that said he saw all his buddies dying, he's going to be traumatized, all over a prank. So there again, Brian, all I'm saying is training changes behavior. So early intervention by a parent saying,
yeah.
think about it.
Well,
You light the bag on the porch with the poop in it. It lights the house on fire. Now it's a homicide. You got to tell
yeah,
your kids that.
it's and that's what I wanted to. You're absolutely, but I want to keep it to, again, what we bring up is like, you don't know where that spiral is going to go.
You
So
never know.
but so
Most
choose.
likely,
Yeah,
most dangerous. Most likely, it's a funny prank. It's going to live with you. It'll be on your Facebook wall when you're older, and you'll tell your own kids about it. The most dangerous has to be discussed. If you don't discuss it with your children, they'll find it on their own. And Brian, that discovery learning
so
leads to skin knees and can
yeah,
kill
so
people.
let's get into the actual mindset or the head of the kids at the time driving the car, police officers, person on the street, right? Because those
Yes.
kids in the car going, hey, honking the horn, F you, and then taking off. We're talking about a pretty low level of intelligence here if they thought that the police weren't going to chase us because they had
Right.
to chase
But
6
can you
people away.
imagine the cops looking at each other going, we're getting punked. There's
Yeah.
no way
Oh
that this
yeah.
happened. They're on the cell going, yeah, boss, you're not going to believe this. You get what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say?
Oh yeah.
So, and cameras on, everybody. They yelled that just before the prank.
Yeah, oh, for sure, for sure. But then it goes into, oh crap, now we're being chased. Oh, we didn't
Right.
think this
And
was going to
that's a
happen.
huge
So
decision point.
they didn't have a plan. But you can tell by their actions, it's not like they said, hey, we're going to go up there, we're going to get them to chase us, then we're going to take a left here, and I'm going to loop around this way. Everything was at bang thinking. There was no critical thinking, not a single one. It's,
Yes,
hey, we're going to go do this. There wasn't a thought after that. Hey, let's go
exactly.
taunt the police. After that, they never expected anything. So what happened when they start getting chased? Oh crap! Now they're what? They're outrunning their headlights, literally. At this time, right? They're driving outside of their performance or skill
And
level,
they have no
right?
idea of the performance level of the vehicle. Do you
Right.
get what I'm saying? Or the maintenance level, or how new the tires are, or if he had a lube and oil and filter and stuff. So what I'm saying is, you got to take the 30,000-foot view and look down at that. If I was going to counsel those kids during that pursuit, if they called and they said, "Hey, Lieutenant Greg, I'd stolen a vehicle and I'm about to flee from police," what I would have told them is, park the car, take your chances on foot. Stop immediately.
Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say? And get out and either run or give yourself up, because you're going to stand a much better chance. But then you got to think about the spirals for running. Now I'm running, I get hit by a car that didn't see me. Now I'm running and a homeowner thinks I'm trying to do an armed home
Right.
invasion. Now it's at night and I run into a backyard and there's two Dobermans that got my name written on,
Yeah.
So what you've got to do is you've got to stop and you've got to roll the tape back. And Brian, you got to create explanatory storylines. What
Yeah.
might happen? Have I seen this incident before, and did it end poorly? And if it
Yeah.
did, that goes in a bucket.
Exactly, and that's kind of exactly how I was describing it, or trying to. It's like, all right, what happens next? Okay, if this is
Yes.
the action I'm going to take, what are the potential outcomes of it? Because something that simple can get you to go, oh, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't do this, or maybe I should take a different route. Because you can throw that right back to
Yep.
the police, right? They go, all right, they see this happening, and they go, all right, we're going to give chase. Well, what are the If that's
Yes.
all I'm focused on is chasing this vehicle, then I'm
No,
outrunning
it's
my
a
headlights because
delicate balance.
it's
Exactly.
what comes next. Now
Yep.
you go to that person who's sitting in their car at an intersection or walking on the street or whatever, and what you see the lights on, you hear the sirens because that all would have been taking place. Yes, so then you have to sit there and not just get roped in and go start staring at it and go, ooh, a piece of candy. Look at the movie. It's, hey, what's going to happen next? Where are they going?
Exactly.
Am I right now? Do I need to get myself and my family out of this situation
Yes.
because something is going to occur? And am I at the
That you're
epicenter?
not in control of.
Or am I in the safest spot I can be right
Yeah.
now? You go so
Yep.
I think that goes for everyone's perspective, not just get roped into hey, I'm that at bang thinking, right? I'm just gonna completely react to everything. It's where are these spirals heading? And I think that's the important thing to remember in all of these.
Let me throw another spiral at you, Brian. One that most people don't orbit and don't think about. Years ago, Aiton Shaner saw a suspicious vehicle hit the red and blues. It was what's now affectionately remembered as a Taurus SHO, the
Oh yeah,
high
yeah,
output
I remember this.
street
Yeah,
drag. The fastest pursuit in my life from the border with Detroit to Mount Clemens, traveling at speeds 130 miles an hour,
jeez, that's fast.
and it was insane. And so there was a point that it was like, hey, got to bail because the weight of the general public and my safety just wasn't worth the
Right.
juice, because I had no other probable cause other than this guy driving this SHO like it was stolen. So what ends up happening, he cracks up Mount Clemens, they hook him. It's a homicide, and he had the dead body in the trunk, hence he didn't want to stop. Now, I've had the exact same situation, Aiton Van Dyke, let's say, start and be, some high output sled, and it's a guy that just wanted to run from the cops and had no warrants. His license was in order, and it was his car. So you don't always know what you're getting into, but you can't use the ends justification. Do you get what I'm
No.
trying to say?
Yeah.
To say now neither can that kid. That kid can't say, hey, listen, I'm in the trick bag now because I stole a sled and I'm in this ride. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit that pedal on the right and I'm going to
Right.
hold it down until something happens. That's not good thinking, and it's not balanced thinking either, because when cops get ramped up, no matter how many pursuits that they've been in, you get tunnel vision, you get focus lock,
Or
and
when
you start
anyone gets
thinking
ramped up.
about
Yeah,
the
the kid.
mission.
And,
Yeah.
and so
So now
just
the
real quick,
kid
just
does that.
yeah, apply that to keep going down that.
Right.
But
But I
apply
also
that to the criminal driving the vehicle
Right.
too.
But I also want to say that the criminal gets that, but there's a third party. The pedestrian gets that.
Yes.
And the pedestrian takes out and starts eating the popcorn and going, holy shit, did you guys see that? And then they step out from the curb. They don't know that the car is used in a homicide, or they just robbed a bank, or it's kids joyriding. I hate the air quotes. But the idea, Brian, is normally those exciting things draw us. They titillate us. So now we're going to go out to the curb. And if our kid does that, you get what I'm trying to say? If the shooting starts and all of a sudden we got to see and be a part of that, and you're going to go, nobody would do that. Louisiana, look at the tapes, folks. Do your homework.
Yeah.
There's the tapes of the two coppers that got shot, and I don't know if it's Louisiana, Alabama, Arizona, Brian, that they were out in front of the house. Now I'm not as sure as it was Louisiana or Alabama. Both coppers were shot by the guy. The guy beat up his girlfriend, barricaded himself in the house for
Oh
a while.
yeah, that
Came
was
out, the
just
cops
last
pulled
year.
up.
Yeah, I know what you're
No,
talking
no, no.
about.
This was just like 2
Oh,
weeks
this.
ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And one of the coppers died, and one's still in critical
Oh,
condition. And I
okay.
apologize, folks. Don't have the article in front of me, but the idea, Brian, is the guy stood over the cop that he killed and was firing rounds. And you can see from the video in the street, the live action video, you can see people running to the scene to watch what's going on, and pop, 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 and all the shooting. What would a prudent person do? One, cover. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Two, dial 911 and have your
Yeah.
finger over the one. But Brian, those are critical thinking skills that go out the window when all of a sudden that chemical cocktail comes in, and we're
Yes.
going, I've got to peek. I've got to take a look at what's going on. That's another lesson, Brian. Training means sitting down with your family around the kitchen table and going, hey, let's watch this incident for a few minutes. And it doesn't have to be the graphic gore or anything else. These coppers are the most highly trained people in this community. They were ambushed and they were shot by this guy, and watch what the people are doing, and then ask your kid, what should they been doing? Do you see what I'm saying? We can
Yeah.
turn this into, and it doesn't matter how old. I would say do that to your daughter. I
Yeah.
know you do. You
Yeah.
conduct this
Yeah.
training with her. But no matter how old my kid is, and Nico's like 35, when he comes by, I'm going to talk to him and Bailey about that and say, how did that impact you? Those are the type of discussions that used to happen around the kitchen table all the time. And they don't with social media.
Right, and that's developing that skill set, that mindset, and taking it from each perspective. Because from a performance perspective, anytime you drive, right, so you can handle your vehicle all day long at 35 miles an hour or
Yep.
55, maybe even 70 or 8, depending on where you live and how fast you drive, and you get better and better, or with your performance becomes easier. You learn the vehicle that you're in, the longer you drive it, right? Things change. But here's the thing. So the second you step outside of something that you haven't done before, I don't care if it's making dinner and it's a new recipe, or new something you've never done.
Yes.
I don't care if it's driving that vehicle at 100 miles an hour. Anytime you're there,
Yep.
so you're already in a category where you don't have the file folders, right? You
Exactly.
don't
It's
know.
new. It's a
It's new,
novel
it's novel, and
stimulus.
it's not. You're not this time. You're not doing that in like a training environment, right?
A
You're doing this.
controlled situation with a
Yeah, it's
lab and people
right.
to with fire extinguishers, Brian, and a
Yeah,
button
you're
to
you're
press. You know,
you're doing it at in real time. It's like the same thing when people look at these speeds and they go 100 miles an hour. It's like, you don't understand how fast 100 miles an hour is.
it's amazing.
100 miles an hour is incredibly fast. Even like, I've done that stuff on the track, in a controlled conditions. And when you do that real time, your performance is not as good as you think it is.
Yep.
It's not just like, oh, I'm just going a little bit faster than I was at 60. No, no, no,
Yep.
no. It's so and but that goes for anything, because this
And
yeah.
you got to remember the chemical cocktail, Brian. So
Hmm.
just like being in front of a one-armed bandit in Las Vegas, the thought of almost winning is just so seductive to your brain. So what happens is your neurons and your axons and your dendrites are working overtime now, going, oh my gosh, I almost lined up those three pears or those three apples. Well, in the car too, I was saying in the world's fastest pursuit that I ever had, I was saying that, look, I'm gaining on this guy. I've got this guy. And finally, somewhere in the middle of Sterling Heights at night, I said, I can't keep this pace in good conscience because one of us is going to die. I slowed down, parked the car, got out, and I had to regain my composure.
Right.
And my engine is melting. Okay,
Yeah.
my rotors
Tires are,
are
yeah.
glowing. Do you understand what
Yeah.
I'm saying? I've got heat coming off the hood and everything. And now it dawns on me, I can't get myself into that situation again. I was the best driver I knew in those conditions. I had
Right.
thousands of examples, and I look back and I said, "What am I thinking? What are you thinking?" And so you've got to do that. You've got to do that mental balance, Brian. Our human performance and our ego are constantly in a battle, saying, "Hey, try." How many people, Brian, have you seen die from trying to take a selfie?
Oh
Okay,
yeah,
could
that
we
happened.
make a whole show about that?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then you and I had a video of a copper. Thanks, Sean Clemens sent it to us. Copper that was chasing a pickup truck. And I'm not bashing cops. I'm not bashing anybody. I'm talking about human performance. So the pickup truck driver is driving into oncoming traffic, accelerating. He's demonstrating human behavior that is putting him in a risk category much higher than what the initial call was. Is some other, sworn law enforcement officer saw this person in U.S. Park Service or somebody
Yep.
and gave chase for speed, let's say. Now, these speeds that they were going at were well over 100 miles an hour, and the guy attempts a tactical vehicle intervention. In other words, the police officer attempts to hit the vehicle. Well,
Jeez.
I used to be a TVI instructor, Brian, but that was historic perspective. I can't speak about that today, and I'm not
I I
qualified to
doubt
go out
I
and teach it today.
I doubt
But
they're teaching it at 100 miles an
I
hour.
would say that
Yeah.
physics and gravity. Do you get what I'm saying? The
Cent-
internal, when you're talking about the types of spins, the centrifugal and centripetal
Centripetal force.
forces that
Yeah.
are pulling inside and outside, is a bad situation and somebody ended up dying. So I'll fast forward to the law that says if you knew or should have known that your conduct or your behavior, and that applies equally to the bad guy and the copper. And the other
Yes.
question is, what about the other people on the street?
Right.
I sleep at night thinking that when I was going through Sterling Heights, there was no other cars on the road but a few scout cars. But my heart of hearts knows that what if something would have happened? What if I would have? What if there would have been a dog on the road, Brian? And
Right.
my unconscious mind says swerve slightly. I wasn't in control. That's
Right.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I'll kind of hit it real quick on a lot of the stuff that occurs, right? So you have that diminished performance. Now, there's a couple ways to look at it, because you can go back to Yerkes Dodson, and as arousal in your environment increases, eventually your performance is going to decrease. But
Has to.
initially it increases. But I want to
It
be clear on
increases
what that means.
parallel. Yeah,
But I
yeah.
want to be clear about what that means, right? So you have things like channel capacity and adaptation, change blindness, sequencing, all that stuff. But you can only handle so many polyphasic skills at a time. So perfect example is driving a car and trying to talk on the radio or do whatever else you're doing, even just
Yes.
change the radio station or look at your phone. Those are all polyphasic skills. So normal operating environment, you're right around 7. You can talk, people text and look around and drive. I mean, it's diminished performance, but people are still able to do it. Pick up the cheeseburger, take a bite, grab your Coke. But under those times of extreme stress, extreme boredom, that number drops to 3, right? So that's where the stop,
Exactly.
drop, and roll, shoot, move, communicate, all that stuff comes down. I know people have heard us talk about that before, but the reason that is, so that's what you can get, is that it's under a survival situation. What your brain thinks is a chaotic survival situation. So it shuts out all that stuff it doesn't care about, starts taking that blood and moving it to our major muscle groups, increases your respiration and your perspiration and all that stuff. But the idea is to initially increase your performance so you can only focus on a couple things at a time. But here's the thing.
Because back
Yeah.
in the day, we only had a few. We didn't have race cars. We had a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
That's the whole thing here too, is that one, you were only traveling at the fastest you could run at.
Yep.
The only speed or the only I guess the speed that you could process your environment at wasn't more than something going 35 miles an hour at tops
Yeah. So
of
I
an
would say
animal.
20 to 35. Do you get
Yeah,
what I'm trying to say? I think that's your bandwidth, right?
so that's what your eye and brain can perceive. Anything past that is so foreign to humans because we haven't
Exactly.
evolved yet, right? That this is new.
So
Anything that's
rock,
traveling that fast.
a thrown rock, a thrown spear, those
Yep.
type of things, folks. That's what Brian is trying to tell you. And that comparison nowadays, your brain hasn't assimilated all of these new speeds. And so now with cars that are faster than ever before our human performance, Brian,
We're,
isn't commensurate with it.
No. It hasn't met it. So if you said your vehicle, topped out at 30 miles an hour, I'd say you're probably good and you can push that, right? Meaning you
Yeah.
look at even like when there's accidents and people slow down and they look at it and you start looking at those speeds, they slow down. You're doing that autonomically because your brain can't process information that quickly, right? And
Its
especially when
internal warning system, the
yes.
amygdala, is screaming, danger warning, Will Robinson, slow the F down.
Anyone, same thing. You've seen all of a sudden a sudden traffic jam where you had to like kind of
Yep.
hit the brakes kind of hard, and one of the things you'll notice is you won't even realize it. You'll maybe reach up and turn the stereo down or something like that, or you'll stop talking if you were. All right, that's your brain going, shut all that stuff out. I need to focus on what's going on in front of me. So that's how these things occur. This is why things come out of nowhere, or I didn't see it coming, because your brain was so hyper focused on the 6-degree functional field of view that you have in front of you that it can't take in any of that stuff. That's why these kids might not have even seen that vehicle that they hit. They might not have even seen it, right? Because they were so focused on getting away and what they were doing that this thing came, and even though it was in their field of vision, they could have seen it and avoided it. They don't have enough attention span to
Exactly.
actually take in that
To
information.
process it. So I've recently bought, Grossman is at writing again, and I recently bought his book on car sales,
On marriage,
which is which is really great stuff. But the idea is, I'm just poking fun at Dave. The idea is that if you take a look at strictly human performance, Brian, there was an instructor legend back in driving, Don Mamrot. And Mamrot was with the Fraser PD back in the old days when everybody carried flintlocks. And one of the tests that he would conduct that nobody does anymore, and he didn't know why he did it. That's a great thing. He didn't understand the science till I told him about the Doppler effect and how auditory exclusion happens. What he would do is he would have a scout car full of young coppers and a scout car with an experienced veteran driver. And he would tell the people out on the freeway, listen, we're going to do the freeway speed limit, and I want you to raise your hands when you know that we're being followed by a police car with the lights and siren. But you have to look straight ahead, and all you can do is look out the window. And then what he would do is all of a sudden he would say, okay, everybody look behind you. And the scout car behind us was on our tail, push bumper distance away from the trunk with the siren blaring. But the Doppler effect doesn't allow that until we slowed down gradually and pulled off. And now all of a sudden you hear the siren. But coppers are convinced that siren is screaming at you. And bad guys, are convinced, oh, we heard the lights and sirens all the time. Brian, your brain can't process. It can't fire on all those cylinders, and something's got to give. And if something gives is your peripheral vision, and now you don't see that kid on the curb,
yeah.
or now you don't see that pole, that's now a homicide or a suicide. You get what I'm trying to say, intentional or otherwise, because you're going to park it in a bridge abutment. That's what I'm worried about, is that the people uninvolved in these are at as much risk as the criminal or the copper.
Yeah, and that this is why we get in these situations are they say, hey, don't turn this robbery into a homicide, right? Well, that's how it occurs. It's
That's
it's
it.
all just cognitive performance. It's your human performance. And so one of the things, because you brought it up too, when you said, hey man, I had to pull back, I had to pull over, and then I realized, oh my God, my vehicle's literally just melting in front of
Yep.
me because I was pushing it so hard. All right,
Way
so
too hard.
but
Way too
that's
hard.
the whole thing, is how do you deal with it in the situation? And that is when you have to exercise that tactical patience, take that breath, start looking around more and realize what's happening, being in the moment and figuring out as you go along. I always give the
That's why we're
analogy,
doing these pods too,
but
Brian.
but
You're
but
exactly right.
it's going to doing the analogy from how do you get from JV to varsity, right? And that's I always use the one from the Marine Corps when guys were like, doing a heavy ruck run or march or something like that, especially a ruck march over,
Yep.
with a heavy pack on over the hill, over the little mountains here in Southern California. But some guys would say, oh man, when it gets tough, you just look down at your feet and put one foot in front of the other, and you're like, that's JV, man. That's
That's the worst advice you can
that's
give
the
anybody.
worst.
Right.
Hey,
Right.
when it gets really tough, that's what you do. What you start looking up and out, and make sure that you're looking around and processing everything that's going on, because that's how you do the training. That's what you need to
And
do
that's when
during those
something's going to
situations.
hit you. Yeah, yeah.
Because
And take it from Brian, folks, because you got to understand that the Marines on the West Coast used to go from Pendleton all the way up to Stumps
Point
on a
Grand
road
Palms.
march. Do you get what I'm trying to say? And so if you think about that's an all day damn drive. That this guy knows what he's talking about. He's telling you you got to force that aperture open, because if you don't, your human performance is going to continue to dwindle until everything that's happening to you is going to be outside of your control, and nobody wants that.
No, that happens even with I get on McKaylee for that all the time. Even just like she's rushing to get out of the house or do something, grabbing stuff, grabbing the dog and the leash and the car keys, and she's frustrated because Harper's going crazy about something. It's like, hey, stop, take a
Yep.
deep breath, put something down, or separate these tasks, because you're gonna walk right out and get hit by a car. You
Yep.
not see something. You're not.
Exactly.
It's the whole. That's why I force her to back in everywhere. It's not got to park tactically and always be ready to go. No, I'd rather her pull into traffic, not back into traffic, or pull out forward into the street, not back into it. Just you have diminished. You can't see out of the back of your vehicle, right?
Yes.
So it's simple things like that. But
But your brain
all of
won't
those,
say, your brain won't pause, McKaylee, and say, be advised, we have a peripheral vision
no,
obstruction. That's not going to happen. And it's only going to happen with training and experience. So it will happen to those. You take a guy like Chunyard, one of our good friends, and Chunyard walking around the vehicle and checking the tire pressure and doing all these other. And Brian, every morning when we were headed to the range and we had our coffee and we're like, hey, Chunyard, we got to go. He would never deviate from that. But guess what? He doesn't get in traffic accidents either, right? He's
right,
that guy. And so you have to, folks, you have to commit a certain amount of time to your day to say, what training do I need in this event? Brian, how many times when the green light changes for the traffic with you, do you just hit the accelerator? No, time out.
right.
This is when
Look
you have
left,
to
look
look
right.
and make sure,
It,
so those little skills, Brian, those micro skills that we teach
no,
are hugely important to human
that's
performance.
exactly it, and that's why we even have people on, like when we had Michelle Palladini and John McCaskill talking about
Exactly.
meditation and mindfulness, and you're going, what the hell? It's like, no, that's the same thing. If you get up in the morning when your alarm clock goes off and you jump out of bed and you're racing in the shower and doing this, like, you're already at bang, man. If you
Yep.
wake up and you take 5 minutes for yourself to
Yep.
figure out your own performance, whatever that may be, well, that's the same thing. So I want just trying to understand that this is affecting a person on their daily life who goes as a normal job and
Yes.
goes into work. But it's the same thing. If your
It doesn't matter
performance,
what so Brian, I want to give everybody a memory and emotion link for exactly what you're talking about. So let's talk about McCaskill or Palladini or Andy Reese or any of the incredible guests that we've had on that talk about mindfulness and how to train your own brain. Well, listen, next time that you go and you're going to take out your trash, you know how you reach in, well, not Brian Marin, but most normal humans would go into a closet, get a trash bag and replace the one that they had. Not Brian. Brian, it's called a window.
yeah,
Uh,
I
uh,
just threw
uh,
it.
so when you take that bag out and you're going to put it in, do you know how that bag defies all known physics? When you
Hmm.
open it up, it's like shredded and wrinkled, and you're trying to pull it open, and then you got to shake it before you put it in. That's you every time you see a novel situation. Your bag is empty. And as a matter of fact, it's atrophied and it's all wrinkled like a prune. So you do that daily too. There's things that task you. And, you've been on the computer, and I've been on Zoom all day, and gosh, my focus, I can't look at one more screen. So what you got to do is you got to take the time, Brian, to open up that bag before you put it in that can, or it's not going to be at its peak performance. So if you're not at peak performance, then you're that garbage bag trying to be a garbage bag, the best garbage bag you can, but you're not going to hold shit. And you're going to spend a lot of time cleaning up the coffee grounds and the stuff that's laying around the back. The reason that's a memory and emotion links, folks that are listening or watching, is next time you pick up that bag, you're going to think about that and go, am I performing at my peak performance? And if you're not, you got to open up that bag. You got to open up that aperture, Brian.
Yeah. No, I like the trash bag analogy. It reminds me of the trash bag chicken from Iraq. Remember that stuff where they go get a fried chicken, a big full fried chicken, those black trash bags? They were so good, though.
Exactly. Do you remember that we not only did we get that, we got the we wanted juice, and we weren't communicating the word right. So the guy gave us gallons of the fresh pineapple juice that they were making.
Oh yeah.
Both of us had the room temperature pineapple juice, and the bees and the wasps were following us back to the hotel room. The horror.
Yeah.
No, 2 hours.
So no, I like the trash bag analogy is good, and the performance perspective gets into a number of areas. I know we kind of like you've seen a number of them, just several in the past few weeks. This happens all the time where you had a law enforcement officer killed deploying the spike strip for the pursuit.
Oh my gosh.
Just staying on the pursuit kind of theme, I guess, because I like the pursuit analogy for human performance, right? A pursuit is a test. It's a test of human performance, just like at the very elite level. It's an Olympic meet, but
the endurance is life like and death. No other competition.
But it's life or death consequences, not gold,
for the
silver,
bad
medal.
guy, for the copper, for the community at large.
So I think we don't give it enough credit because it's something that happens a lot, and like you don't understand what we're talking about. All of these events are pushing the limits of human performance. I don't care if you're Michael Jordan or whoever. Like this is the absolute peak that a human.
So let's follow that.
At.
Just 1 second, Brian. Do you know that Jordan, when he's at the top of his game and when he's on the greatest game scoring of his life and assists and everything? Okay,
kid growing up in Chicago is amazing.
Yeah. So do you remember that every once in a while a player would fall down and the ball boy, the towel boy, would have to come out and he'd have to wipe up the area that was wet? He was in an elite league with the best players in the world. And if Towel Boy made a mistake, people were going to get injured, people were going to lose points, and they were going to lose games. So millions of dollars and protracted hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts and everything else were on that towel and on that kid. So we don't think in terms of that, do we, Brian?
No, not at all.
So when we're looking at this human performance, that tack strip kid, that young copper, is the one that's running out to throw the spike strip down to stop the vehicle. The person is already at tunnel vision that's driving the car, okay? He's already exhibited poor choices that got him to that situation, and his endurance is gone because it's they don't ask for a tack strip the first second of a pursuit, right? They try to go through other means. So it's like a de-escalation process. They say, well, let's do this. Let's chase for a while. Then let's get these guys ahead of them, and let's see if we can TDI and all this other stuff. So usually it's the last thing in the loop. And the person's already demonstrated, the criminal has already demonstrated that he's not going to pay attention to the rules. Now you put a copper out in front of a speeding vehicle with a person that's not making sense, and we're going to throw this item out in front and then pull it back right quick before the other cops get over it. That's what people don't understand. You have to deploy it, Brian. The suspect vehicle runs over it. Then you got to yank it back, or all the other police cars will drive over the remaining spikes. Get it?
Right.
So people don't think about that. And we've had 3 in a month and a half coppers, good, decent coppers that were doing their job, folks, that went out there. Administrator, if this is your policy, you got to get better training, or you got to think about getting behind that vehicle rather than getting in front of that vehicle. Brian, it's a missile. It's saying, here's a catcher's mitt. Well, go out and catch that missile. That's my opinion.
No, it is, and that's what I'm saying. Like, because these things become, all right, hey, this is how we deal with this situation. Oh, this isn't too hard. I'm throwing something out on the road and then pulling it back.
Yep.
Okay. No, that's like looking at that professional basketball game, looking at Michael Jordan, go, oh, well, that's not that hard. I can go out there in the yard and do some of this stuff. Just because they make it look easy.
Do you remember the first time you did a shuttle run? I was going through the prep for West Point. And I had to go to this arena, this gym, and they go, the first thing, and I was in a best shape of my life, folks, the best shape of the Reams life. And they said the first episode is the shuttle run. Have you ever done a shuttle run? At
Yeah.
the end of the shuttle run, I was seeing the heat monkeys. You get what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say? I was going, oh, I'm going to hurl. And that was like event number one, just to set the stage. That's the same thing, Brian. We think this can't be that hard. What's going to happen? But you know what? If we keep seeing these deaths of these young coppers that did it, and somebody out there is going, well, there's a bunch of other, situations that you don't know about. Hey, I know about this. That copper ain't going to get more dead, and you've got to do something because there's a next copper. Do you think pursuits have abated, Brian? Have pursuits ebbed just because there's a COVID virus? No,
No.
bad guys think pursuit is a way out. We got to change that. And we got to change it two ways. We got to change it with training and the administrators, but we also have to change it with the laws. We have to change that. Remember when I said earlier about the mentality of saying, hey, it's joyriding? There's no joyriding there. You killed a guy. That's vehicular homicide, and it might have been premeditated murder if the guy veered towards the copper. And maybe he said, hey, I'm only going to veer towards the copper. In his heart and his mind, Brian, the criminal said, I'm just going to veer towards him to push him back so he doesn't throw that spike strip. You think he's in full control of that car going at that speed after,
Right.
ramming through intersections and stuff?
It
It's a
seems
lose-lose.
it is, and this gets into that kind of policy that I know a lot of places will, hey, we might have to back off the pursuit, or they won't do them in areas like, that, like the one that recently happened just right out by me here a couple months ago. A Marine was killed at night. Started in Oceanside. They started chasing the guy. He gets on the 5 southbound in the northbound lanes. So he's fleeing south. So that's an immediate no go. They don't follow, but they had air on
Because
station.
they don't want to allow an incentive.
Right. And
I am fleeing because you were chasing.
it's
No, that's a
still,
good
even
point.
though there was no one technically behind him, or at least
Yes.
not in that lane. I'm sure, assuming they got in the proper lane going south in the southbound lane. But he, same thing, caused an accident and killed a Marine who was on active duty. And of course the suspect survived. But it just, that those things occur, and now you have these policies of, what do we do then when someone takes off? Because one, you can't let criminals get away, because then they'll just say,
Because
well,
then they'll know, and
they'll
that'll
just
be their,
always
new
run,
entry.
because they know they're
Right.
not going to chase us. But when is it actually worth it? And so you got to balance that. And I would think that there's a lot of these situations occur from incidents that it's not worth it. It's not the guy who just kidnap someone that we got to chase him down because there's a kid in there, or we're trying to stay on him, or multiple homicide suspect who's absolute complete, whether he's speeding in a car or walking down the street, is an absolute threat and danger to society.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to make those calls, but a lot of them are just like, what it's not worth the risk, right? The risk to the community at large and to the officer. Like, don't even forget them. Like, I'm sorry, but it's not worth their life. That this person was not worth that officer's life. It's just not.
There's a very narrow bandwidth. If it's a copper down, or if it's a choking baby, I'm going to be
Right.
there. You
Yeah.
get what I'm trying to say? But I totally agree with you on that. And I would say this, because I don't want to spiral too far from our central focus about
Yeah.
human performance. But I
Right.
will do this, Brian. I will say that somewhere out there is a techno genius, and you've got DARPA, you've got
Yeah.
IARPA, you've got these agencies. There's no way you're telling me that I can shut down the emitter on your back that you transmit to other insurgents with the snap of the finger now, but I can't shut down the vehicle that's fleeing in front of me. Do you
Well,
see what I'm saying? There's got to be a way,
I
and the
think
way isn't
we're
always
getting
the
to that.
old-fashioned way.
I think we're getting to that with the technology, because all vehicles are run like you can. That's how, I mean, that's how a lot of newer model vehicles are stolen now too. Is you can gain access through a technological device without ever having a key or having to pop the window or door or anything.
We see that in the rentals. Folks, if you want to
Yeah.
laugh, watch Brian and I, no matter what airport that we get off at when we're going to go to training, we go out and get the rental sled, the death sled, and the very first 15 minutes aren't doing the Schoonyard check the sled. Our first 15 minutes are going, how do you get the window down? You know what I'm saying? Because they've
Yeah.
got, right, it's like hieroglyphics,
Dude.
and we got to call a scientific expert that reads Sanskrit to figure out,
Yeah.
hey, how do I put the emergency flashes on?
It's always the back door is always the problem. For some reason, they're raising tailgate door. I don't know what it is
Yep.
in every
Yep.
SUV now. It's like in a different spot, different location. Doesn't work unless it's in park or off or this. And you're like, Jesus, I just want to put my crap in the back.
And I'm spending so much time looking at that center console, which now is a television the size of the LED I got at home.
Yeah.
And I'm going, hey, look at all these wonderful features. It's ridiculous. So
No,
if they can spend money on that, Brian, they can save a cop's life. And we're talking about all the lives of the community people too, because that driver doesn't have the right to drive recklessly or carelessly and impact my life or my family's life.
no, and I know we're keeping it to the performance that these situations do lead to policies and laws, right? And so
Yes,
what should it be? It's that
sometimes good ones, right?
yeah, it change in focus as to like, hey, you know what, this is now maybe if fleeing is now you're a charge that is now that, hey, that's the worst thing you can do, right? Because
Yep.
hey, less of a charge if you just stay and go, yeah, I just did this, more of a charge
Oh
if you
yeah.
flee, right?
So
It
listen,
already
you're,
is,
you're you're
but you
talking receiving and
yeah,
concealing
yeah,
stolen property, which I can plead down to nothing, or
yeah,
you're talking all these charges that are going to be added on at the end, and the chance that you might kill somebody. And somebody right now is going to go, yeah, but if I get out of a stolen car, a copper is going to be at a heightened level of, yeah, he is. But now you press on the accelerator, and what's going to happen
yep.
is we're talking that inverted U hypothesis. And guess what? When you get to the perpendicular point, both of you aren't thinking. And now you got a chance of getting killed by the cop or killing yourself or killing a civilian. You don't have that
I'll,
right. That's what you got to think about.
I'll post a link to something in the episode details where folks can kind of check out the Yerkes Dotson that we mentioned. But it's
Great.
over. It was been around over 100 years, and it was around before that. It's just they articulate it a way, and people try to have their own way of articulating it. Look, it's very simple. You don't have to write a new book about it or new
Or
do
do an inane video
do
on Boyd's OODA loop that you
do
don't understand, but you're
yeah.
the first one pointing at the yellow pad.
but you'd say those observe, orient, decide, act really well.
Yep.
No, but
And it's
that
on
that
the book list,
but
Brian.
but that brings us into another aspect of what
Right.
Boyd was talking about with the OODA loop. We've had
Yep.
questions and stuff about the OODA loop, but this gets into that mental performance. So everyone is in that, right? And if you this Yerkes Dotson that we're talking about is you get to a certain point is you can't handle anymore. So
Exactly.
if
So
something's thrown at you, there's another issue. Something else has to go. Something's going to go at some point. Your performance or vision or hearing or something is going to go because you can't process all that at once. So I
right.
think that's kind
So
of
a great comparative to modern day Yerkes Dotson is, folks, go out to the batting cage. I know that your community's got one where they put the balls in and you can adjust it from hard ball to softball, and you're up there at bat. Do me a favor, do that, and find one of your friends that has a newborn, and hold the newborn up over home plate. And the more that baby gets pegged with the ball, the better its reflexes will get, and sooner or later it'll catch the ball. No, you're going to have baby mush. You're going to kill a kid. So don't do that. Don't do that. And by the way, that's a joke for all
baby
the
mush.
people that said, hey, the Trump injecting bleach and stuff. It was a flippant joke, you idiot. But the idea is that do that with a 2-year-old. Do it with a 4-year-old. No, Brian, first of all, you got to get to the point where the kid's going to process the incoming information. The second thing is you start slow. You
Hmm.
start small. Then you build the skills. So training changes the behavior, and the kid's able to process the information and do the hand-eye coordination and catch the ball. And guess what? Now the success, the drugs are dropping into their brain and going, woohoo, you did it. They want to do it again. That's what we have to do with your human performance. When you see an incident that's an MD COA, you got to learn to take cover and hide and run and get away or prepare for the fight or do whatever it is that your job entails doing. And that's going to stop domestic violence or homicides, in the workplace violence, all those other things. You got to put those tea leaves, Brian. You got to put those pre-event indications together. And I'll tell you what, in a pursuit, you have very little time. The gift of time and distance at 100 miles an hour is a lot less. And that's what Boyd was trying to talk about. Boyd
Well,
was trying to talk
yeah.
about if you can settle down your own brain and understand your own human performance, you can get into the loop ahead of the
That's
enemy of a trained opponent and actually be making decisions that are more complete and more efficient, Brian, faster.
and that brings it back to kind of what I meant when earlier on when I brought it up and I said everyone is so used to being that at bang kind of thinking, and
Yep.
this is more about thinking and mindset, and that's why I
Yep.
reiterate, because even though every type of training has gotten so much, it's better in 2020 than it was in 2015, it was better in 2015 than it was in 2010, it's better, we
Yes.
continue to improve, yet why do we still see these mistakes in performance? It's because we don't do the critical thinking stuff, right? So that's why I
Exactly.
said, like, those criminals weren't doing it. They were at bang going, hey, let's go mess with the cops, they can't chase us, we'll just take off. There was
Look at our
never a
response
thought.
to COVID. Exactly.
Their world had never, they never took another thought after that of what could happen next, or am I going to get in trouble, or what if no one ever did that. But
You're
then at the
exactly
same
right.
time, okay, that happens to law enforcement, right? The guy going, oh, well, hey, I got to go chase this guy. There's never a thought after that. Now that's the person then standing on the corner of the street going, staring at police lights, hearing the
Or,
siren, or
what would Geppetto do?
yeah,
Exactly. You're
looking
exactly
at
right.
it going like, wow, look at that, there's a chase in front of me. Never going, hey, you know what, I might be in danger where I'm at, I might need to move. So
Exactly. People pulling over to the right and the one driver going, whoo-hoo, they're getting out of my way so I can drive, never anticipating that the emergency vehicles are behind them. That's, Brian, how many times does a state trooper have to get killed where traffic doesn't pull over to the left
oh,
and
I
give
know,
them that lane?
I know.
How many times does a flagman on a construction zone get killed?
Yeah.
Now they've had to put lights and flags and people with vests
And
and police
warnings with
vehicles
dollar
into.
signs, yeah,
Why?
everything.
Because our mission, what we perceive as our mission,
Yep.
is more important than yours. And folks, we got to come off the gas on that one. Give the time and distance. We got to take a big look in MLMD COA. If we don't, and we don't pair that with good training,
I
with experience training, people are going to
Yeah,
continue to die.
and I think for folks just listening right now, it's just that what's the next step? Is you can't just be that reactive thinking like, hey, where is this going to lead? Where is this going to lead to next? What's the next thing that's going to occur? Can you do that in the moment?
Of
Absolutely.
course you
If
can.
you can absolutely 100% sit
We've
there in the
we've
moment and
not
go,
made a living out of this for 4
yeah,
decades. You get what
yeah,
I'm saying? Just so you know, that's
we
just like our,
we've
our
been
piece
making
comment this morning. We've been making no money
we've
on
been
this
making
for
other
40 years.
people a lot of money for a long time with this way of
So
thinking.
the comment from your great friend in Saudi Arabia this morning that said,
Uh,
"Hey, I'd like to be considered for that program manager's job." Do they understand that we're not getting
that's
paid for any of this?
hilarious. That's
So
hilarious.
yeah, if you
Yeah.
want to do it for free, you can
Yeah.
start tomorrow.
I would love to get on the podcast and just like, we don't pay people that
Exactly.
come on here, right? So,
Exactly.
I thought, never mind. So no,
Chuckle, hattery, buffoonery.
no, but that's just, sitting there and being in look, if you're reacting to a situation because you've been trained for that or whatever, you have your training that's going to take over, so to speak, right? You
Yep.
protocol, that could be protocols, procedures, policies, it could be actual whatever it is, you're driving a vehicle, whatever the training is. So mentally you have to be thinking, well, what's going to happen next?
So
What can I
if you
do?
don't pair that
Yeah.
pursuit driving, the emergency vehicle operation, with a scientific validated program about what's happening in your head, and
Yes.
I don't mean while you're driving, because that would be at bang, I'm talking well before it, and then have a legal update and a medical and what's going to happen and what's the stress load on my vehicle and what's the brake fade on this particular car that I'm going to be driving that night and who's the last person that checked it. All of those things are how you live a full life and be an expert at life and not make silly mistakes that are going to get you squashed.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, because we continue to see these. Like I said, like it's amazing how many, especially specifically with the spike strips, where every story is the
I'm
same.
tired of
I
that.
mean,
Yep.
every story is the same, and I
It's
know I'm
always a
not.
hero. It's always a great
Well,
copper
yeah,
doing the job.
and I'm not bagging on that tactic or technique or procedure, right? If it's something that's been used and tested and this is what we're going with, I don't want to do it that way. It's not to go, hey, we just need to change this. To me, it's all the same. It's the performance, it's how they process their environment and why they made those decisions and what the critical thinking that was involved. As so much as I don't care about what the method is that you use, I care about, look, to me, these situations are all the same. It's that something happened in a performance and a cognitive performance level that caused this to happen.
And folks aren't thinking of the felony murder rule, Brian. If that copper was killed and you were the proximate cause because your pursuit that started it was the reason the copper was out there throwing the spike strips, you're going to be charged with murder.
Yeah.
And you're never, ever, ever not going to be caught. They will not stop until you are caught. Pull over, raise your hands, put your hands at 2 and 10, and go, I screwed up. You got a much better chance in the legal system.
Yeah. Well, then it's the same with the guy who chased the kids down in his car for
For the
not
love
ringing
of
his
God,
doorbell and running
that's
and
what
laughing.
911 is for. And
Uh,
911 would have told the kid, relax, it's a doorbell prank, but we'll come by anyway. You don't have to escalate a situation from 0 to 60 and get a whole bunch of people killed for nothing. That guy's life is ruined. His
his
family
family,
name,
those
the
kids.
kids in the
Yep.
car, the owner of
Everyone.
the car, the person
That
that had the thing. And now the lawsuits are going to start. Hey, you had my kid over for an overnight and you weren't managing. You see what I'm saying? So
everyone.
what were once friends, everybody, and it's
That
all shite.
community. That
It's all
community
shite.
was just destroyed
Yes,
destroyed over a an error in judgment, which was basically overwhelmed by events and lack of critical thinking ability and
you got it.
cognitive performance. I mean, that's literally now a whole community is destroyed. People's lives are lost over this stuff, and it's not
Meaningless, ridiculous.
over what? Over someone ringing your doorbell. I mean, it's in all these cases that's the similarities we see in all of them. And that's why we say, hey, these cases are all the same to us, and that's what we mean at that
Precisely
level.
because the architecture that created the situation and the poor choices that led to the death of another or of the person that was involved all come down to the same set of, hey, there was no advanced critical thinking. People didn't do the explanatory story lines. They didn't determine the ML and the MD code before they got into it. And that's stuff that we can help them with, Brian.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you got anything else to add, I think that's a good place to kind of bring it in for a landing for today.
Sounds good. Remember, my call sign this week will be Blossom.
Don't forget, everyone, training changes behavior.